And we're live. Welcome back, Shifties. Welcome to episode number episode 35, which is episode number 1 of 2025. Welcome back to Shift the Journey. My name is Tito Amogus. I'm your host. I am the host, the producer, the creator. This is me. I brought about this show just because, coming up through the Air Force, I spent 20 years in the Air Force. And then I moved to a whole new city and a whole new state. And I didn't really have a network. I had like 15 people in my network. And I didn't know what kind of resources were available to me or who was out there who would be willing to help me in my career journey, i.e. at the time, getting my first civilian job. And so lo and behold, my sister says, hey, connect with this guy right here. Chris Spinman Spintzyk. He was actually quite instrumental in my learning how to interview and what to wear. I was like, I don't know what to wear. I've been wearing the same thing for 20 years, pretty much. But, what do you wear? What do you look out for in interviews and stuff? And it was really super helpful. So this is my platform that I'm so excited to, restart again for this year, where I get to share free information. And for anybody who's looking to make a career shift, there are people out there who want to help you. There are people who have information, and it's all free. So, hit me up if you're watching this, and let's connect and let's have a conversation. All right. So to our guest, Spinman Spintzyk, tell everybody where you're originally from and where you live now.
Yeah, I'm originally from Chicago, born and raised, grew up 3 miles west of Wrigley Field in the city itself. After I graduated college, I moved down here to the Nashville area. And so I live in a suburb of Nashville called Murfreesboro.
Oh, Murfreesboro. Yeah.
Yes, the borough.
There. Yeah. So, I read somewhere that while Nashville is a quickly growing city, it was like in the top 20, but like Murfreesboro is like a little bit higher as far as growth.
Yeah, it's getting crazy, a lot for sure.
Yeah,
lots going on.
A lot of traffic. I see a lot of traffic.
Yes.
So, what when you moved down here, what industry were you in? Were you already in recruiting?
To a certain extent, yes. I was in the staffing business, but I was in the light industrial staffing business. So I was staffing folks inside warehouses, manufacturing facilities, folks picking and packing boxes, working on machines, lathes, that type stuff, kind of light industrial type work. That's the industry that I was in Chicago. When I moved down to Nashville, I ended up joining the same company, but a franchise of that company.
Okay.
In Nashville wasn't a big light industrial place, but we did a lot of work, hospitality, warehouse, picking, packing, shipping, receiving, that type stuff. And so I kind of joined there, but eventually kind of migrated into technology. And I've been in technology for 20 years now.
Wow. So were you like staffing people to go work in the Gulch back when the Gulch was like warehouses and stuff?
Yes.
That's so crazy. Now you can live there for like in a 1-bedroom apartment for like, I don't know, $3,000, $4,000 a month, whatever.
Yeah. And before, my office used to be on Murfreesboro Road, right across the street from the housing project that used to be there. And so, that's where I had to go into work every day and send people to work from. And so we were sending people to construction sites, and they were doing hotel, kind of hospitality cleanup and stuff like that, and everything. And so, so it was a completely different candidate pool than what I'm used to working with, now from a technology perspective.
Yeah, it was a completely different skyline. I don't know if you've seen the like through the years what the Nashville skyline looks like. We lived there from 2015 to 2020, and I looked at the skyline recently, and I was like, I don't know what some of those buildings are.
Yeah.
You know, it's been 5 years, not even quite 5 years, like 4.5 years. And I'm like, dude, the skyline has changed so much. That's crazy.
Yeah. I've been
So,
here since 1995.
oh, yeah. Well, that's nuts. That's the year I joined the Air Force. That's crazy. So, what prompted the move into tech? What was the
It was
catalyst for that?
it was more of an opportunity. I wanted to get out of the light industrial business.
Mhm.
I just didn't see a future there for me, but still wanted to stay in the staffing business, and so I joined a more traditional staffing agency and went to work. I ran their largest account for them, managed their largest account for them here in Nashville. And then a friend of mine ended up going to work for a tech recruiting firm as a sales guy. And
Mhm.
when my time was up at the staffing company, he reached out and said, "Hey man, any thoughts on maybe doing some recruiting in the technology space?" And I was just like, you know what? Absolutely, I'm happy to give that a try and everything else. And so I joined his firm and worked there for a few years, and then moved along, but stayed in technology ever since, and can't see myself. Well, I say that I can't see myself doing anything different, but I've got a different approach on recruiting than most, and so I consider myself a generalist. I could probably recruit in any industry and still do it because the process is the same.
Yeah.
Um, but my network is probably deeper in technology than anywhere else, just based on the time that I've spent in it, for sure.
Yeah, that's your story about somebody reaching out to you. That's like reason, I don't know, 5081, whatever. We talk about this all the time. That's another reason why a network is super important. There's so many people I know right now, especially right now, who are, in the crazy job market, who have gotten, or who are not in the market for a new job, but they've gotten their current position through networking, myself included. So it's pretty crazy how the thing that everybody on the show, everybody who I've ever talked to, I'm like, hey, what's one thing, a piece of advice you could give to people who are looking, and they're like, network, network, network.
It is the as harsh as this is to say, and I mean, but the truth is still the truth. The way the job market is right now, as
Mhm.
broken as it is on so many levels, the only way that somebody is going to find a job these days and for the foreseeable future is via a network. The apply to all the jobs and hope that something's going to come to fruition and everything else. I mean, that's an effort in futility. The processes are broken. I I am still waiting to hear from somebody who got their job from applying online. Everybody
Yeah,
that I talk to, everybody that I know, either a company reached out to them directly and found them on their own, or they leverage somebody in their network to get in the door and land the role that they have.
yeah, that's nuts. I think my first job, but that was in 2015, and then my second job was like in 2017. But after that, it was like network, network, network.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that's
and it's so important now. So
yeah.
important.
I've seen a lot of content creators who talk about the job market right now, and like the hardest thing, about even getting somebody to call back is like, if you don't know somebody at the company, you're probably not going to get a call back. They probably won't even look at your resume, because they're like, oh, we have 1,000 um chat GPT generated resumes. And we're like, which one of these actually applies to, the job description. And so that's actually, do you do you come across stuff like that where you're like sifting through these resumes and you're like, oh my gosh, what is this?
All the time. We see it all the time. You can tell when somebody's kind of chat GPT to death their resume. We're running into a lot of times now where people aren't even real. And so I don't understand what the point of creating a fake profile or a fake resume to apply for a job to then engage me in a conversation where I'm going to find out that you're not real and not qualified, and so you're never going to get a job. I don't understand the purpose of that, but people are doing it all the time, and it clogs everything up, and it wastes
so
people's
weird.
time and everything else, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. I mean, I just don't get it.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself. I've heard about that, I've read about that, but I was hoping that somebody who's, in this space would have some insight as to like why they would even do that. But if you don't even know, it's like I still
Well, I mean, I think
still don't know why. I know even less why. That's
I think there are in some instances what I think people are trying to do, and it doesn't work very well unless you're just completely not paying attention or you're clueless. But they'll create a robust resume that somebody would look at and say, "Holy cow, this person's ideal." Okay, so reach out, set up an interview. They're not qualified, but they're hoping that either they're going to be slick enough with Chat GPT in a screen in front of them that every question that's asked, Chat GPT is going to be able to give them the answer, and they're going to be able to answer it, or they've got somebody else feeding them information. But again, what purpose does that serve? Because when you show up at a job and you can't do the work, you're going to get found out. I mean, I don't get it. I really don't get it.
It's crazy. It reminds me of I don't know. I see clips of this show all the time. What is it? Impractical Jokers, where they're like in somebody's ear and telling them to do all. They're in the other room and they're watching him and they're telling him to do all these different things, and like the other person is unsuspecting. But it's like, yeah, that's so weird. That is really.
I mean, and that's what it is. And I mean, and it's happening a lot. And I just don't understand why.
Yeah. So, is there a job like a job type that you're more like? Is there like a favorite job type that you're that you have where you're looking for somebody like, oh, I really like this, or I really know this. I don't even know what is there.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think every recruiter has their favorites. With regards to, hey, if I could recruit this every day, or if I could talk to these folks every day, I'd be in hog heaven, because they're so engaging, they're so funny, or it's a personal interest of somebody's, where, man, I really like software engineering, so me talking to software engineers every day, that's fun to me because these are my people.
Yeah.
For me, it's folks on the creative side, or it's folks on the product side. Where it's more, kind of free-spirited, creative, software engineers. I love them. It's part of my world and everything else, but I don't know enough about software engineering to be able to hold a real in-depth conversation. I mean, it goes over my head so fast, it's ridiculous. And so all I'm doing is nodding and smiling and saying that sounds cool. And the reality is, I'm the least technical person they're ever going to talk to. And so, I mean, it sounds great, but I don't know what it means. And so, a lot of times, I purposely focus on other things other than going in depth from a pure technology perspective, and focus on some of the intangibles and getting to know them as a person and what they aspire to and everything else, and stay away from the rabbit hole that is pure engineering, because I can't keep up. I mean, I just can't.
Yeah. What are some of the things, like the soft skills and things like that? What are some of the things you look for?
Well, I mean, empathy, EQ, self-awareness,
Okay. Yeah.
Humbleness. Nobody wants to deal with a diva. Nobody wants to deal with a jerk, and everything else. I mean, kind of confident in their ability, but not cocky, if that makes sense. Where you want somebody who's comfortable kind of talking about the
Oh,
things
yeah.
that they've done and is passionate about what they've done and really can kind of get into it and explain and distill it down, but not just they're the be all to end all and they've got all the answers and have it all figured out, because nobody wants to deal with that person either. And then the ability to kind of distill things down. I always tell people, I'm like, okay, you're going to explain what you do, the For Dummies version. So, I'm a third grader. You need to explain to me what you do in those kind of terms so that I understand. And that's a test, because if you really know your stuff, you can explain it in layman's terms and have somebody understand,
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't sometimes, then it's all just buzzwords and all this other stuff and everything else. And it's like, you really kind of don't know what it is you're doing, because you can't help me understand. And those are kind of the things that I hone in on when I'm talking to folks, for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I have I have some peers who, like, their family members who they don't ask them what they do, because they go, oh, I don't even know. So they're, not very well versed, but sometimes, I'll have a family member who's like, oh, what do you do again? And then I have to explain it. And it's like, maybe if I explain it in a different way, but then my wife was like, no, they just don't, they just want to talk to you. So it's like, oh, okay.
Explain it however you need to, hold up the conversation, do your thing, and make everybody happy.
Oh, man. So what's if somebody is thinking about becoming a recruiter, what is the I know, there's career journeys are always so different, even if it's like, oh yeah, it's the same level as this other person, but they came in from different angles. What's like the most common way that people get into recruiting?
It's funny because they kind of stumble into it, almost like I did. I mean, when I fell into recruiting, I answered a classified ad in the newspaper.
What?
Back home in Chicago. That's how old I am. That's how dated it is. That I responded to an ad, a very cryptic ad in the newspaper.
And did you pull that newspaper off the driveway of your house too?
Yes.
Thrown by some kid on a bicycle, man.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. The Chicago Tribune. Wow. Way back when. But I mean, recruiting, people fall into it a couple different ways. Because you've also got to understand that there's the agency side of recruiting, which is where I am and where the majority of my career has been. And then there's the internal side of recruiting, the corporate side of recruiting.
Right.
Okay. From a corporate recruiting perspective, the talent acquisition team and everything else, that's normally where a lot of people get their start in the business, if they're aspiring to kind of have a career in HR. And then some people just get in recruiting and love it and never go any further. Some people use recruiting as a stepping stone to move up within the ranks of an HR department. And, that's kind of their career goal or their career journey. Yeah. On the agency side, it's a little bit different, because a lot of people come from industry and they're like, I know, SQL developers. It's what I do. I understand what they're like. I've got a network of those folks. They're my peers. They're my friends. They're my everything else. Companies are hiring them. So, I can make a living talking shop with my friends and connecting the dots and doing that work. And it's something completely different, but my skills, aren't going away. Everything that I've done before isn't lost when I look into and come into recruiting. I mean, one of the guys on my team, he actually leads our team now, but I mean, he came out of a systems engineering background. He was an infrastructure guy and wanted to change and said, you know what, recruiting sounds fun. I've had recruiters call me and I enjoyed the conversations and stuff like that. And it sounds like a fun way to kind of, earn a living and go to work every day. And he ended up interviewing with us, and I mean, is just blown it out of the water. But I mean, but his background was infrastructure engineering. I mean, at the end of the day, recruiting, you just got to like people, and you got to be able to run your yapper and enjoy talking and getting to know folks and listening and trying to kind of connect the dots and match things up. I mean, that's the gist of it. And so anybody can get into recruiting if they really enjoy the people aspect. I mean, it's very hard for an introvert to be a successful recruiter. Say that.
And let me tell you, I've spoken to so many recruiters, and I have spoken to who I could tell were introverts. Like, they had questions that they wanted to ask me, but they were afraid to ask me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're dragging this out. You're killing me. And so, I'm having to initiate the conversation. I'm like, hey, this is like backwards. This is weird.
Yeah.
You called me.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, so what made you interested in this? And I'm like, didn't you just ask me what my phone number was? Didn't you just send me something? You found something about my profile, on LinkedIn or whatever. And now you want to have a conversation. You want me to know already. It's the funniest thing. When,
I mean, you run into that a lot of times, and a lot of people first starting out don't get some really good training. So they're kind of thrown to the wolves and stuff like that happens all the time when it's like, well, tell me why you think you'd be a good fit for this role. Wait a minute, I don't know anything about this role. You called me to explain it to me. How am I supposed to know this? What are we doing? And because they're working off their little script or whatever like that. It's like, man, throw that script over your shoulder and just have a conversation with somebody. It's a lot better that way.
Right. I like it when I ask them questions where the script is like it doesn't apply, or maybe they've not been asked those kinds of questions or whatever, and they I don't know what to say. It's okay. We're just having a conversation.
Yeah, it's okay to say I don't know. Let me find out and get back to you. I mean, that's a valid answer, and it's probably better than you making something up and coming back to bite you later when it's like, oh yeah, tell me about this job, or you tell them and everything else, and you get in the interview and it's like, oh yeah, the recruiter told me this, and the person interviewing you, no, that's not true.
No, that's terrible. So what would you say is like the preferred personality trait for somebody who would be a successful recruiter?
You've got to be a little extroverted. You've got to be a glutton for punishment to a certain extent and have some thick skin, because the business is a grind. I mean, it really and truly is. And so if you don't have some grit behind you and some kind of, self-discipline and some really want to, hey, I'm not afraid to work hard, then you'll be successful. But if you're afraid of hard work, or you think it's all going to kind of fall in your lap and be easy and all that other stuff, recruiting is not for you. Because I mean, put it this way. A recruiter is got to be the best salesman or saleswoman on the planet for one reason. They're selling the only product that can tell them no. So I've got to convince a client that they want to hire somebody. I've got to convince a person that they want to go to work for the client. And at any point of time, either one of those people can say, yeah, no, not interested. And you're back to square one.
Oh man, that's
nuts. So you got to sell twice as hard and work twice as hard to get a deal done as a recruiter, because anybody can say no at any given time. And so that becomes it's tough. And I mean, we're in the business, we get paid a premium to find exactly what a client is looking for. And so that's what a lot of people don't understand about recruiting. I don't work for or get paid by or anything from the candidate. The client pays my fee.
Right.
They are the ones who get to say, this is what I'm looking for. Go find me this. And if you don't fit that parameter, whatever it is, as much as I'd like to help you, as much as I'd like to help you land somewhere, whatever like that, If my clients don't need somebody with your specific background, I'm SOL. There's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
I can help people try and get connected. I can help and use my network and everything else. But from a placement perspective, if my client says I need a software engineer that's got this many years of experience with this particular technology, if somebody comes to me and says, yeah, I'm a software engineer, but I've got that many years of experience, but it's with a different language, I can't do anything. I can't do anything about it. My client will say, Spin, I told you I want this.
Yeah.
This person doesn't have this. What are you doing? That's not what
Yeah.
I asked for. Go get me what I asked for.
So, I've worked with several account executives, AEs, and I feel like the top ones were like type A personalities. Would you say that that's what a top recruiter would be?
Yes, to a certain extent. I think there's a lot of type A. I think we all have some type A in us, but I think the really good ones are the empathetic type A's.
Okay.
That have the qualities of the type A to kind of work hard and be struck and be focused and kind of, overcome obstacles and do all those things, but they do it in a humanistic way to where it's not painful to deal with them, where the experience is an enjoyable one, where somebody feels like, you've got their best interests at heart and you actually give a crap about them and what they're looking for and what they're trying to do, both on the client side and on the candidate side. I think most people would say that dealing with a recruiter, the people that have the best experiences are the ones that say talking to, Joe the recruiter was like talking to my buddy over a beer. And the ones that have the worst experiences say talking to Kevin the recruiter, it felt so transactional and so used car salesy and so icky that I never want to do it again. I mean, that's kind of where you hear a lot on both sides of the
spectrum. I gotta go wash my hands. Gotta go wash my hands. Gotta go wash my clothes.
Yep.
Need to take a hot shower because that was
yes.
It feels terrible. Yes. No. Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've had several people come on here, like small business owners, and they said, they talk about sales and they're like, yeah, it's relationships. If you know what you have and what you can deliver, and you find out what the other person needs, the client or prospective client needs, and not just try to upsell, you're going to be there for a long time. You'll have lots of good engagement there. So what are like some of your biggest challenges, or what were like throughout your career as a recruiter?
I mean, I think that the challenge, I mean, it's still a challenge today, and even more so, is getting people to engage. Going out and finding somebody, what we call sourcing, which is going out and finding somebody with the criteria that we're looking for, to fit this role. If that's a tedious part of the job, but it's a relatively easy part of the job, because if you know where to look and you know what to do, you can find those people. But just finding those people, finding their resumes, finding their profiles doesn't do you any good if you can't get them to engage in a conversation and you can't convince them that they maybe want to do something different 2 weeks from now. And so let's go through the process, because even if you find the greatest candidate, I mean, a perfect example, we'll talk about you for 1 second. You're in a role now and you're not actively looking for something. So if I called you and said, Tito, hey, I've got this opportunity and everything else, and pitched it or whatever like that, and it didn't absolutely blow you away, you'd say, no, man, I'm not going anywhere. I'm good. I'm not. And so now that person's checked off the list, and I've got one less person qualified for the role. And so You've got to catch people at the right time with the right opportunity, who are open-minded enough to listen and kind of, for the right thing would move. Because I think most people, if they pump themselves full of truth serum, said, hey, if the right opportunity, if a beautiful opportunity dropped in my lap, I'd entertain it, I'd listen, and maybe I'd move on. Most people are like that. There aren't very many people that would say, absolutely not, I'm never moving anywhere. I don't care what somebody pitches me. I'm not interested. I don't want to have the conversation. That's the minority. But the other thing too is just getting time on somebody's calendar. People are so busy these days that it's very hard to get them to engage in a conversation where it's like, I can't talk to you. I mean, and I'm running into it myself. I mean, a perfect example this week, my calendar is absolutely crazy to where somebody, if I'm not squeezing somebody in, my next available time to talk to is Monday of next week already. And we're just started this week now. I mean, I'm already, jammed up a week out, and that's how most executives are. That's how most candidates are and everything else, to where it's like, hey, as much as I'd like to talk to you, your email's still in my inbox and I've got 400 other emails to get to before I get to yours, before I can even respond. And so there is the challenge in that regard around messaging and around, being creative and how you reach out to somebody and different platforms to use and different approaches to take, because just getting time on somebody's calendar is probably the hardest thing we've got to deal with nowadays.
Yeah. It's interesting because I worked with several people when I worked at the General who had been there for years in the teens. We went to we had an office party for somebody who had been there for 20 years. Somebody was there for 25 years. And some of these people had technical jobs. And it's like, holy cow, what? You've been here for this long. But I actually work with somebody now who's been with the same organization for the majority of my life, 40 years, I think. And while everybody has something that goes, oh, I feel like if I get this kind of offer, then I'd leave. I have worked with so many people who enjoy routine. And so then I feel you on that, trying to get somebody at the right time in the right mindset where you're like, hey, I have this opportunity that, it could be life-changing for you. But then they're like, no, I don't want my life to change. It's like, oh, okay, well, alrighty.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I joke with people when I reach out to them and I'm like, I'm calling and I'm hoping today you rolled out of bed and are just absolutely miserable. Something happened on the commute to the office. You spilled your coffee. You tripped on the stairs up into the building. Your computer didn't turn on. Your boss ticked you off. I just need that one little crack in the crack in the armor to get myself in there to say, hey, maybe you want to have a conversation about this, just maybe, and then I cross my fingers and cross my toes and hope that it works, because a lot of times, I mean, that's what it is you're just catching somebody on a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I also worked with somebody who thought that all recruiters who contacted him, he's like, it's a scam. I was like, no, it's not a scam. And more than half of our team had been placed by ITAC or something. And he's like, what? And we all laugh. We're like, you're joking, right? He's like, no, I never answered those people because I thought it was a scam. I was like, that's actually kind of funny. Well, I mean, probably not for you.
No, definitely not funny, because you hate to hear that, but there are a lot of people that have never worked with a recruiter before, and so don't understand the process, don't understand how it works. They assume that they're having to pay the recruiter and everything. It's like, man, what, how much is this going to cost me? And when I say it costs you nothing, they're just like, what? And I'm like, yeah, if a recruiter ever asks you for money, you better run away, because they're doing something wrong. That's not how it works. But some people are just, they've never engaged with a recruiter, so they have no idea as to where guys like me fit in the ecosystem, at all.
Yeah, it's so nuts. It's thankfully, I've had opportunities to speak with several recruiters. So then, I understand it, but yeah, it's just kind of funny when I come across somebody who's like, I have no idea, what that is. It's a scam email or like this person. It's not. It's a bot on LinkedIn or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people now are starting to get bad experiences with recruiters because of what are called ghost postings, where
Yeah.
recruiters are putting stuff out there for jobs that aren't real to either kind of
Yeah.
build a pipeline or do some of that stuff. And if you're not being honest with people and stuff like that, that really puts a bad taste in somebody's mouth, especially folks that are actively on the job market, that are looking for something, that are just getting frustrated with lack of progress and lack of everything, to have that put on top of it, where it's like, yeah, I applied to this job and that job's not even real, it's not legit and everything else. I mean, that's just frustrating, and I'm a big believer in the fact that's not the way to do business by any stretch.
No, definitely not. So you talked about like your biggest challenges. So what's like your greatest reward from from this
It's going to sound
thing?
really, really cheesy, because you expect, and everybody, of course, you hear that and you're like, oh my God, what a cheese ball to, to say that. Of course he's going to say something like that or whatever. But man, I mean, it's the notes, the thank yous, the Christmas cards, the relationships, the friendships that are built out of me helping somebody land a role, or me helping a client hire somebody that they want, and then just being able to do that, and you build those relationships and those friendships that span years and years and years, and about people's families and their kids, and you're talking about barbecues, and you're going and you're hanging out and going to events together and stuff, just kind of doing life outside of work. That's the reward that makes it all worthwhile. I mean, yeah, I get paid to do what I do, and I earn a good living, and keep my wife in the lifestyle that she's accustomed to, and all that fun stuff, and everything else. But I mean, at the end of the day, that trumps the feelings and knowing that I've had a positive impact on somebody. That trumps everything. I mean, I tell people, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I'd still help people land where they want to land. I just wouldn't get paid for it, because I just love doing it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I've never done any work as a recruiter, as you know. I'm like a data guy, but I have, through my network, I have helped friends of mine who were looking to hire somebody, and I've helped them hire somebody who was a friend of mine who was looking for a job. It's like, how many times? It's been like 3 times already, and each time I'm like, God, that's so cool. It's so much fun. When I see that, they're like, oh, hey, yeah, by the way, I accepted the offer with so and so's company. And I'm like, dude, that I love that. I live for that stuff too. So
yeah, I mean, 20% of my day, 25% of my day is spent doing that kind of thing, where I'm just introducing people to other people I know at companies that aren't clients of mine, but have a role open where my friend works or whatever like that. I mean, I just did it. A really good friend of mine down in Florida, had been looking for a while, and she came across a posting for a company, and she looked and she said, Spin, the director of marketing out there is a friend of yours. Do you think there's any way that you could put in a good word? I've already applied for the job and everything else, but could you reach out to him and maybe put in a good word for me, or something like that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, happy to do it. So I call him up and I'm like, listen, she's already applied, her resume's in your system, she's absolutely awesome and would knock this role out of the park. I'm telling you, take the time, tell the hiring manager, have the 30-minute conversation with her. You will be blown away. I have no doubt about it, or whatever like that. And he said, Spin, he said, the fact that you're calling and telling me this coming from you, knowing that you're not going to send any idiots our way, you're not that guy. He's like, I'm going to go to the hiring manager and tell them exactly what you just told me. And I get a phone call from my friend that says, yeah, they interviewed me, they made me an offer, I accepted and everything else. And my buddy called me back, the marketing director, and he said, Spin, he said there were two other candidates in the running. He said, but the fact that your endorsement, you gave such a stellar endorsement, and I trusted your endorsement, which made the hiring manager trust me. He said that's what put it over the top for your friend, is the fact that you were willing to do that, and in fact she's knocking it out of the park. So
that's awesome. Yeah, trust and respect go a long way.
Yeah, and so and that's the fun part of the job. I mean, obviously I have to earn a living, so I've got to get deals done. I have a company that I work for that, I mean, I have responsibilities day in and day out. But I'm a big believer in treat others how you would like to be treated. And if I was looking for a new opportunity and I needed some help, and I reached out to somebody and said, hey, can you help me kind of open a door or make a connection? I would hope, my friends and the people I reach out to would say yes. And so how am I not to do that for somebody else? I mean, that's just, credit my parents for raising me to obey the golden rule and everything else. And so that's something that sticks with me and is at the forefront of my head, when I'm doing work and when I'm trying to help people connect the dots, for sure.
Yeah. That I debated talking about anything about my dad, because I want to keep things light, but that just reminds me of so everybody out there who doesn't know, I lost my father the day after Thanksgiving, and we recently had his memorial service. And one thing that I said at the memorial service was that you have like your perspective of like how somebody, right? And like I knew my dad as somebody who was super talented, super funny, like really funny, had no hair. Thanks, Dad. And like really smart. I got a lot of things from him, like mannerisms. My aunt said my voice sounds like him, but with a different accent. It was just the weirdest thing. But I learned through others just how giving he was, how generous he was. And so like my parents believed that in the Philippines, the only way out of like generational poverty is through education. And so they've helped over 1,700 working students at their alma mater in the Philippines, who like sometimes maybe it would take them 6 or 7 years to finish an associate's degree or whatever, because they're working, like basically working full time and then working, to pay their tuition and stuff like that. And so like, you talk about the golden rule and what we've learned, from our parents. And, I think about that and go, yeah, I've been, I put it into practice, but then I didn't really realize, how much of that is like that I got from my parents. So I just want to, shout out to my mom and dedicate this episode to my late father, because he left a legacy. Let me tell you, there's some big shoes to fill. I mean, he only wore like size 8 shoes or whatever.
But they were big size 8.
It's a big size 8s, man. Yeah, because I remember when I passed him in height, I was like, whew, I'm finally the tallest person in the family. And that was he was 5'4". He was 5'4". So when I passed him, I was in like 8th grade, and I was like, yeah, I'm tall now. And then my middle sister married a guy who's like an inch taller than me, and then my oldest sister married a guy who's like 6'4", and I'm like, well, I was the tallest.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So, oh man, it's been really interesting, having this conversation with you, and just thinking back just on, like looking back on your career and seeing the kinds of challenges you face and the and some of the things that you get, the things that you really like in your career. If you were to give anybody who's like trying to get into recruiting or thinking about getting into recruiting, if you're to give them one piece of advice, aside from like build your network, because we already established that's like number one priority, right?
For sure.
If you were to give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
on how to get into the industry or how to be successful in the industry?
Oh, okay. How to be successful.
Okay. One piece of advice on how to be successful is, in this may sound cheesy too, but it's absolutely 100% legit. You've got to learn, know, and get comfortable embracing the grind. Not every day is filled with, oh man, I closed a mega deal and this is fantastic and we're all going to celebrate and all this other stuff. I mean, there are a lot of days, in fact, the majority of days, it's tedious. It seems, like you're doing redundant work. You're doing the same things over and over again. You're meeting with a lot of rejection. You're not getting a lot of traffic. And that can really kind of wear on you and kind of suck when you're like, oh man, I got to do this again tomorrow, and I got to do this again tomorrow, because there's a ratio, that is out there around, what if you work backwards from a placement, how many people you have to have submitted into a client, which means how many people you have to have screened, which means how many people you have to have reached out to in order to get them in the process. And you can work your way backwards. And some of those days and some of those numbers where it's like, hey, depending on how hard the role is, it's like, man, I'm going to have to talk to 100 different people before I can get, 20 of them that can do the work. And out of that 20, I've got to screen that 20 down to 3 to 5 to submit to the client. And then we've got to go through the process and everything else. And if that doesn't work out, I've got to start all over again, and do that. And in order to talk to that many people, how many resumes do I have to look at to find the group of people that I want to talk to? I mean, it's a numbers game, and it can get pretty what's the word I'm looking at? Pretty grindy, pretty gritty to have to do that every day and stay motivated to be able to do it. But if you embrace it, if you look at it as a challenge, and if you play the game against yourself of, hey, my goal today is to get to, I want 15 people to say no to me, because I only need one of them to say yes, but my goal is to have 15 people. So how many people do I have to talk to in order for 15 people to tell me no and one to tell me yes? You can kind of play games with yourself to kind of do it and make it entertaining, because there are some days when you're just like, what have I gotten myself into? I just feel like I'm beating my head against the wall and gaining no traction. But then, something good happens, and you look at it and you're like, okay, this is why I do it, and it's awesome and everything else. And so I'll be ready to get back at it again tomorrow and do it all again. I mean, it's a fun business. It's a lucrative business. It's in my blood. I mean, I got out of the business on a couple different occasions to try something different, and I've worked my way back in and everything else. And so, I mean, I just absolutely love it. I mean, I love what I do. It's so much fun.
It's like the Godfather 3 meme. It's like every time I think, get out, they pull me back in.
They pull me back in. That's exactly right. It's happened to me twice. It's happened to me twice. Oh my gosh.
Well, hopefully, if you ever decide to get out, they pull you right back in again.
Yeah. If I ever decide to get out, it's because I've found a way to live my life in a hammock and earn ungodly amounts of money via my phone or something like that. I don't know. I mean, that's what I'll end up doing. I'll be in Tahiti or Fiji or something like that.
Oh my gosh, man, that sounds great. Well, listen, thanks for being my my first guest of the year.
Yeah, man, this is great.
It's been really good, man. And you have some good advice for some people who may be thinking about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and kill the stream. But anybody out there in LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook land, hey, if you got any questions, hit me up. If you have if you're thinking about, making some kind of career change, I will try to fill your head with as much knowledge as I have, brain dump into your brain. And so if we're not connected already, connect with me. And I'll see you guys again next week. Next week, we got my good buddy, Chris Anderson, who was he was a drill instructor. He was an Air Force drill instructor. And then he got his commission, and he was a comm officer. And then now he's He's retired, and he's actually one of the local musical celebrities down here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Nice.
So shout out to the Rougaroos. But yeah, we're gonna have
Yes.
Chris Anderson on next week. But until then, you guys have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Oh, don't go anywhere, Chris. I'll see you in the studio. Peace.